And now, Senator Gatti with Senate Bill 512. Senator Gatti.
Wow.
Senator Gatti, thank you and the group from Shreveport who drove a long ways and got up early this morning and watched those cheese sandwiches because this group might get into them.
I'd like to enter to the...
Wait, Bishop is eating.
Oh,
man.
Senator Bishop, you just got moved back in the lineup.
He found that bag with cheese sandwiches in it. That's what he did.
It's Bossier.
I'm sorry, not in Shreveport. I've been corrected. Bossier.
That's right. Bossier and Webster.
Senator Gatti.
Thank you so much, Senator Morris. I am so hangry right now. That's hungry and angry. That's what we call it back home. That's a redneck term of endearment. You know, it's a big deal in our area right now, this bill. I know I've talked to most of y'all about this ahead of time, and I'm going to be short in my responses. There's very few of these students who will just come forward and share their heart with you. Senate Bill 512 deals with an issue that's been going on for quite some time, and it deals with the prayer in school issue. These children behind me were praying so much at their school that they were recognized in a federal lawsuit. And that's really not the kind of citation you want to get, but it is what happened.
Yes, it is.
It is. And my mom told me growing up, if you get in trouble, it better be for something good. And you know, I never could find anything they got in trouble for that was any good, but these kids seem to have found something. So we all know that student-led prayer is completely okay. Students can initiate prayer. We have a whole section of law on student-led prayer. But there's a huge chilling effect in a situation where all the parents are okay with the teacher praying with their child, checking on their child, whether their child's being bullied, whether their child's having some issues at home, going through a family situation or a death. But once under these lawsuits, the school boards and the coaches and the teachers, they really just feel like they're under a gag order. So what this bill basically does, and the students will tell you more about it, is it gives a pathway to make sure you're not stepping on anyone's toes. It's a 100% agreement or zero privileges. And we want to make sure that no one is offended by prayer, that no one feels like they're being indoctrinated, no one feels like they're being pressured. And so this bill basically in Part 2, B1, just simply says if a parent signs a permissions, that would be proper. I'm sorry, I'm so hungry right now.
And let's see, what is the amendment number, Ms. Johnson? 2913 being passed out now.
And so 2913 puts the bill in the proper posture because after visiting with staff for quite some time and yesterday really specifically, the issue kind of came to a head after some things that happened back home. And so I will just briefly say that this amendment allows a process to happen whereby a parent can sign a permission slip for a specific teacher or any teacher to check on their child, and if it calls for prayer, they can do that. Right now, that is not the case. There is no avenue or venue in any way that, even if all the teachers go to the same school, all the students go to the same, if everybody goes to the same church in the little rural school, there is a gag order on them not to talk about these things. So, my goodness,
thank you, Senator Gatti. Senator Appel, did you have a question on the amendment? Okay. Is there any discussion on the amendment among the members? Senator Boudreaux, you have a question on the amendment?
Say again, it sets up a process?
Well, what it basically says is the parent or legal guardian or legal guardian of each child, each student in attendance at the gathering or whom the employee prays has submitted a signed request that the employee may participate in the gathering or pray with this child. That's important because the courts always look at, well, they assume that there's got to be one kid that didn't want it. You know,
is this like a permission slip? I mean, we're signing a permission slip to allow our kids. Okay, so that is the process that you've incorporated into it. Okay, I'm clear.
Thank you, Senator Boudreaux. Is there any questions on the amendment? Are there any objections to Amendment 2913 to Senate Bill 512? Hearing no objection, Amendment 2913 to SB 512 is adopted.
Thank you. We have some speakers that would like to speak, and then I'll answer any questions at the end.
And Senator Appel has a question for the author.
Yes, sir.
You and I were discussing this yesterday, and as you know, or not, this committee's heard this type of legislation for at least 10 years that I've been here. And it's always been the case that prayer was allowed in a school as long as it wasn't part of the classroom function. So, first of all, does this bill allow prayer as a classroom function? In other words, in the classroom with the teacher?
Well, I think when you look back, yeah, and I think it may, but it would only happen if everyone in the classroom had turned in this permission slip.
So,
if you have
as I appreciate the way it's structured now, you can have prayer in a school as long as it's like across the hall in a separate room, but not in the classroom. I mean, is that a fair characterization in your mind?
Yeah, you can have student-led prayer in clubs, groups, FCA, first priority.
So why do we? I mean, it's always been the case when these have come before us that there's been litigation, very expensive litigation, resulting from
there has been
that aspect of having it with the teacher in a classroom.
Well, and I think and all those cases have something in common. The teacher prays, and a parent gets mad about it. Okay, in this situation, the parents, starting with a student-initiated request, would ask the employee of the school to pray with them. That's a whole different factual scenario. And these cases, when they percolate up to the Supreme Court, they are fact-intensive. So in looking at this, and children will talk about it, you could have a classroom of 20 kids, and they all want to be able to talk with the teacher about these issues or have it bring it up in class, and the teacher will say, we can't talk about this in here.
Why can't we? Why is it necessary to go to that step when you could do exactly what you want to do with the way the law is structured now, and it has already been sustained by the courts?
Well, because whenever a school or school board gets sued and they become under the ruling of a federal judge, they have to pass guidelines, which will be talked about later, that say teacher can't bow their head, teacher cannot walk in the room, teacher cannot initiate anything, and these teachers are under a consent order. And so...
And you don't believe that this is going to generate such litigation and create a consent order anyway?
Once again, from a broad overview of all the cases on the Establishment Clause and the First Amendment, parents get very upset when someone tries to interfere with their religious rights to their child. But we also get upset as parents when everyone in the class it wants to talk about these issues, and the teacher says, I cannot talk about it with you because I don't really have permission to do that. Well, the parents hold the right. And so we're in a situation now where this right has been eroded away, and the only way for a coach or a teacher to pray with students during this time, we feel like, is if there is a request from the parent, and the request has to be unanimous.
So I'm from Jefferson Parish. This doesn't affect just your little school,
That's
or your
correct.
little district. It
That's correct.
affects the entire state of Louisiana. I've got a lot of Muslims. I got a lot of Jewish people. I got a lot of Catholics, atheists, the whole world. Y'all may not have that where you are.
We do.
I do. And so when you do this, suddenly this may create a lot of conflict amongst students and teachers.
Well, actually, it decreases.
But you're asking them to sign off a release.
Well, no, it
so then you got
decreases the conflict.
Teacher, student pressures, and
it actually we think it'll have the opposite effect. It will decrease the conflict because that teacher knows that if a student encourages teacher prayer, that she'll say, no, I can't do that because we really literally don't have permission to do that. And so
who initiates this process? In other words,
students do.
So if I have a class, I'm being hypothetical, you know that.
I understand.
If I got a class of 20 kids and a third of them are Christian, and a third are not Christian, and a third you don't know, and that Christian third initiates this process, you don't feel like this creates an avenue for pressure back at home, in the classroom? I mean, I don't have a problem if that third goes across the hall and does whatever they want to do, which they can do today.
I don't think that's the vehicle where the situation where this will be used at all. I think you'll have it used in plain dealing rural areas where they've been saying the blessing for 50 years, and everyone in the classroom is
yeah,
okay
but this
with
applies to everybody, in every school, in every district in the whole state.
I'll give you an example.
I'm not the same. My people are not the same as your people, unfortunately.
I understand.
You got that right. Oh, I'm absolutely. We're heathens down there, I'll tell you.
I'll just say this: this permission slip process is a lot cleaner than the old way that it's been handled, where it's just lawsuits like whack-a-mole. Someone prays, they get sued. Someone else prays, they get sued. The teacher, the coach knows ahead of time, I may want to do this, but I can't. I don't have permission to do it. This is a paradigm shift, because typically the state actor is pushing prayer on people. Like the very first case, that's what happened with student Shemp in 1956. That's where this all started. It was a memorized prayer being said over the loudspeaker. He objected. This is different. This is students wanting it, and the students want this. The teachers want to do it, and in fact, the teachers were named in lawsuits.
But if the students want it, why can't they just go across the hall and do it like they do now? I mean, listen. I went to public school a long time ago. Nobody prayed. We didn't pray, because there was a diverse group of people in these classes, and they have different religious views. And
well, I think that's the issue. If you have a diverse group, this probably would not have any effect at all on your school system. But if you have a typically homogeneous group of the same, like if you're down in Lake Charles and everybody's Catholic, this would apply. If you're down in
but everybody won't be Catholic. You're going to have different. Okay,
no, but actually,
you know where I'm coming from. I'm not against what you're trying to do, but I have a problem because of the nature of the composition of districts that are outside of your area. That's all.
Right. So, well, the waiver is not, the permission slip is not religion specific. It is.
I understand.
For any religion, it doesn't promote.
In my world, everybody's mixed together. We're not all homogeneous, so it's a different thing. So anyway, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator Pell. Senator Walsworth, you had a question?
Just real quickly, and I know these young people have got to get on a bus and go back home, but I'd like to go on that bus with you, please. But two things. One, right. I want to make sure that with the amendment, that if there's one that doesn't sign, that he's taken out of the classroom, to make sure that everybody in the classroom then has it. Do you see what I'm saying? Because you continue to say it's either all or nothing, but I don't necessarily see that it doesn't disallow that you can remove that one. I don't think that's what you're trying to do. I think you've continued to tell me that it's either, if everybody wants it, that's fine, but if one doesn't want it, there's not going to be prayer in this. But I don't necessarily see in your amendment that I feel the confidence that it gives that one the right to say, no, we're not going to do that.
Well, under Part 1, and we did try to find that wording, it says the parent or legal guardian of each student in attendance. And what the scenarios we talked about hundreds of scenarios to come up with this wording. That scenario means if it's 15 kids in a second grade class and only 14 kids have turned in this permission slip, then the teacher cannot do it.
Okay.
That's clear, and the teacher does not get to exclude that.
And you think that's clear enough that in your, you see what I'm saying? It doesn't necessarily say that.
It can be cleared
I can remove the one kid, and now I've got everybody in attendance that has signed the permission slip. That's the only thing I don't think. You've told me that's not what your intent is to remove the one kid who doesn't sign, but it is the one kid who doesn't sign that can keep the rest of them from praying.
Well, that's actually what the courts are concerned
about. And that's what
about.
The court is.
The courts are very concerned that there's a person in that class that is sickened by prayer. Right. And they assume that in every classroom, that their rights are being trampled on, their rights to, especially the right between the parent and the child, to foster that religious relationship with whatever God they worship, and they don't want a third-party teacher impressing rights. So the reason this concept might possibly change the factual scenario is because the parent signs the permission for the child and says, "I'm okay with Coach Walsworth."
Yeah,
doing this, and it's just like you sign permission slip for the child to be spanked or to get aspirin. You know, those are parental rights. Those are big deals, and we allow those rights to be signed off on other people.
Second of all, I think our problem is we've tried to take prayer out of school, and that's probably where some of our problems in the school systems are now. And so I'm telling you, there is nothing wrong with our kids praying. So,
thank you.
And I'm glad that there's coaches out there that want to pray. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Walsworth. Senator Milkovich for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Gatti, thank you for bringing this bill. If I understand correctly, this bill respects and recognizes parent and student-initiated prayer rather than from school officials. Is that correct?
That's correct.
This bill is not about forcing people to pray or express their faith. This is about giving people that happen to be in a school setting freedom to express their faith. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And as I understand your bill, you have worked very carefully to avoid offense to objectors. Is that also true?
That's correct.
And I think you may agree with Senator Walsworth and I that too much prayer, too much faith, that's one problem we do not have currently in schools. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that.
And would you agree that prayer and faith is something that can build the moral fiber of our children, instill lifelong lessons and disciplines and values in the students, and make our schools safer?
I think those are all true.
Thank you, Senator Gatti, and thank you for bringing this bill.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Mizell.
Just a brief comment. I think you and I had talked about this, and the irony that you know, a good friend of mine is a chaplain at the prison, and he is able to go in freely and pray with what is a terrifically diverse group of people who need the option. So I support what you're doing. I just thank you for doing it. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Mizell.
Thank you, Senator Mizell. We do have cards who would like to speak in support. Mackenzie, is it Swilly? Mackenzie Swilly, if you come to the table, Mackenzie. Catherine Gatti?
Whoa.
Oh, no, it's an inside job.
Katie Walker. And we have more, but we'll... Miss Swilly.
All right, so as many of you know, Webster Parish has had a lawsuit.
Miss Swilly, if you'll pull a mic closer to you. Some of us are old, bald-headed, and deaf.
Microphone move closer to you.
Okay, I get it. Okay, so as many of you know, Webster Parish, that's where I'm from, has had a lawsuit filed against them in response to religious activity in school. And throughout this process, we realized that we need to stand up and utilize our freedom of expression. So, like, throughout this whole process, the students have had to take action, you know, because we can't let our rights get taken away from us so easily. And throughout Lakeside, we have organized events like Prayer at the Pole, where it's before school, it's at 7:45 in the morning, and it's actually inviting parents, community members, and teachers. So that's a good thing. And we realized that what we were lacking was our rights, and that's where Protect Prayer, which Catherine will touch on later, comes into place. And Protect Prayer pretty much educates students and equips them to use their rights throughout their schools. And this helps our students get more involved throughout their schools and teaches them how to live out their faith in a legal way. And that's what's most important throughout this process, is that our students know the legal way to do it. That way we don't have to have this kind of problem that we're facing today. And yesterday, our school board Monday, our school board held like a meeting, and they created this new policy. And in this policy, I'm quoting it right here, it says, school officials shall not offer a prayer, recite a prayer alongside or with students, bow their heads, kneel, join hands, or otherwise posture in a manner that is likely to be perceived as an endorsement of the prayer. This is a new policy that Webster Parish School Board is trying to set in stone for next school year. And there was only one person that actually had the faith to stand up and oppose it. And in my opinion, nothing bad can come from these waivers or this amendment. This amendment will solve any issue that this policy has brought upon us, and I feel like it is the, I don't know the word for it. This will pretty much be our saving grace for our school. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Swilly. Miss Gatti. Do you know anyone in this room?
Just a few. Well, I do want to start off by saying, well, although my last name is Gatti, this is wholeheartedly where my passion is and where my core is my faith. And although it happens to be the same as my dad, this is completely and totally something that has been student-initiated and student-led. And Protect Prayer came about when the lawsuits were filed against Bossier and Webster Parish because of the religious activities in our schools. And so this has been something that students have come out just to support students living out their faith in their schools. And so our job that we have taken upon ourselves as a nonprofit organization is to educate students on the legal rights that we already have, and then to equip them with ways to use these rights, like the waivers, and also encourage them just as a body of believers, because we come together in these rallies where we have hundreds of students from different schools and churches and denominations and districts and all of these different things that would separate us normally, and we all come together as the body of Christ. And although all students are not there, and that is not every single student, it is a large majority of students from many different schools, and I see this just as an opportunity for these students to be able to live out their faith in a legal way, and just encouraging them. And these waivers are just a large encouragement. And really, the passage in the Bible that Protect Prayer was founded on is Ephesians chapter 6. It's called the Armor of God, and it starts off saying, "Finally be strong in the Lord and the strength of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil." Because we know that we're not angry at the people who filed these lawsuits. We don't want to be hateful towards them. We don't want to attack them. We just want to show the love of Jesus to them through our actions, and we do that through putting on the full armor of God. And at the end of this passage, it talks about binding everything together in prayer, which is why prayer is what we are working to protect. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Ms. Gatti. Ms. Walker?
Thank you all so much for letting us come. I just wanted to kind of reiterate, like, we are forced that Protect Prayer is for students and we're by students, that with our rallies and student testimonies, we've seen over 100 students get behind us. We've had hundreds join us in our rallies and things like that. It's just so encouraging to see that your peers and your students, they're taking action and they're excited about Jesus and to share the love of God with their friends on campus. These prayer waivers, though, they would help us and kind of assist us in the process of sharing our faith on campus. This way we would know beforehand who wants to participate and who doesn't. And that way we won't offend them in any way. And because, like Catherine said, we don't want to make them angry or anything like that. We want to show them love. And the one thing that we want to do is just be able to fully live out our faith on campus, and having our teachers and staff members behind us and our friends and peers would be great. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. And we do have others who wish to speak in support. Katie Boland and Jacob Ryan. While Katie and Jacob are making their way to the table, I have other cards in support who do not wish to speak. Brandy Melissa, George Allen, Allison Smith, Abigail Lucas, Patricia Bouillon, Tate Towns, Olivia Turner, Jeb Spiney, Sarah Elizabeth Gatti, Jordan Pruitt, Gavin Fleck, Gavin, help me, Gavin. Flankin. Got it. Ronald Rhymes, Vicky Rhymes, Jason Rhymes, Taylor Culpepper, Rayleigh Prince, Courtney Bouillon, Corrigan Wiggins, Gracelyn Brewster, Ellen White, Susan Gatti, Christy Cross, Logan Bailey, and Carolyn Rhymes, all in support who do not wish to speak. Giving you. Ladies first.
All right. Hello, committee. My name is Katie Bolin, and I'm a junior at Benton High School. I wanted to first thank you so much for your time. This is something that so many students at school are so incredibly passionate about, and I feel that it is an incredible honor to be with you today. So thank you so much for your careful attention. I wanted to share one of my favorite Bible verses that I believe Protect Prayer just embodies. And it's 1 Timothy 4:12, which says, "Let no one look down on your youthfulness, but rather in speech, conduct, love, faith, and purity, show yourself an example of those who believe." This is what Protect Prayer is about, and many other in-school, student-led religious organizations. Protect Prayer exists to facilitate the opportunity for students to learn about Christ, to love Christ more, and to learn how to be leaders in their faith, because that's what true leaders are. They are faithful and humble servants of God. That is a true leader. We serve to encourage our students to set an example for the younger ones. What sets us apart is that this organization, Protect Prayer, is for all students, meaning kindergarten through 12th graders. So this gives our little ones the opportunity to learn what it looks like to be a servant leader. And we also understand that we are here today not just to defend and to stand up for our rights as students, but also those who are not yet going through the school system yet and who are so young that they don't quite have their voice just yet. We are preparing to take the baton from the generation ahead of us. And what this organization does is equip us, students equipping students through God's word, not on our behalves, but us encouraging each other that this world can be hard and it can be dark, but that if we unite together and we're different for Jesus together, that encourages us to strengthen our baton to pass it on to the generation that's coming behind us. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ron.
I just want to thank you guys for allowing us to come here and have this great opportunity. There's not many high schoolers that say that they have gotten to testify in front of the Senate on something that they really are passionate about. And I realized two things as I was sitting here. Being the last one to speak, you realize that everyone's already taken just about everything you were going to say. And also that while Senator Gatti was up here speaking, I'm pretty sure he copied my notes that I had written down, because he hit just about every bullet point that I had prepared for.
That's the way he is. He doesn't.
But I mean, this is such an important thing that I do not feel that people will be tired to hear it repeated over again. So I'm going to do just that. The theory behind this whole thing is that constitutional rights can be waived. When one person gets arrested, they have the right to remain silent, and then that right can be waived. And so the theory is that it's the same thing with these prayer waivers. It's the parent's right that their child's teacher cannot engage in religious expression, such as praying with the student. And so, say that I were Katie's teacher and her mom and dad signed this waiver, and I'm going to read the top section of the waiver if you haven't seen it for you. It says, "I," and then there's a blank, so Mr. or Mrs. Bolin, "the parent or guardian of the student named below, agree to allow my child the opportunity to have access to prayer with a teacher whom he or she trusts, and do hereby give permission to the listed teachers and or faculty members to pray with my child in the event he or she has requested prayer. Undersigned does hereby waive any right that would prevent undersigned teachers from praying with my child." So what this waiver is basically doing is, it's the parents. They have a choice. We're not forcing anything on them. So that we're avoiding that there, so people can't say that this is something that prayer is being forced upon them. This form is acknowledging that, and it was discussed about other religions. I've had several questions about this going into it. They're like, what if a Buddhist would like to come up and pray, or things like say I have a Buddhist teacher, and as a Christian family, I don't know that my parents would be necessarily comfortable with a Buddhist teacher praying with me, just because we do not necessarily share the same beliefs. So the bottom section of it is specific teachers. So teachers that your parents know that share the same faith with you, they can engage in that prayer. So it's not necessarily all teachers, which, yeah. I don't know, I lost my words. But so the prayer waiver seeks to waive that right. I know that this has been discussed already, the hypothetical of a class of 14 children in that class. They say a prayer before they go to lunch every day, and then once the lawsuit was filed, they had to quit doing so. And then so the theory is, if all 14 students in this class have their parent waive their right, then the prayer before lunch can continue. And if only 13 sign it, then obviously the class cannot continue praying. But this goes far beyond the classroom. I know a lot of people think that this is just teachers engaging in prayer with students, but it goes as far as with like a teacher in an FCA club being able to participate in prayer with them, a football coach before a game, there are all kinds of clubs on campus, different sports organizations that these students are wanting to engage in prayer with these teachers, faculty members, or coaches, because let's be honest, these are the people that we spend much of our time with growing up. I mean, we're at school with these people for 7 hours a day. I personally have so much respect for all of my teachers, and I mean, they're some of the greatest people, and I look up to them. And if I wanted anyone to pray for me and with me, it would definitely be one of them. They would be on the list, no doubt. And so I just think that prayer is so powerful. It was mentioned, bullying was mentioned earlier, and these teachers get to see what's going on. Some may act like they don't see what's going on, but teachers know what's going on in their schools, and so it's the power of prayer is just unimaginable. And if I go to one of my teachers and she knows the situation that's going on, I just feel like she could relate, or he or she could relate to me and pray with me, because they know the specific needs. The easiest way to describe the whole thing is it's a permission slip to pray. That's the 4-word definition. And I believe that is all I have for you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Jacob. Senator Walsworth, a question?
Jacob, is that right?
Yes, sir.
When the permission slip, it just says teachers, but you could easily be a principal, assistant principal, it doesn't necessarily have to be teachers, correct? I mean, I think that's what the law says.
In the prayer consent form we have listed, it says the listed teachers and/or faculty members.
Our staff.
Yes, sir, faculty members.
I think we
could
staff, put staff in there too. Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And number 2, I don't mind giving you that baton at all. Y'all are all awesome, and I hope your parents are good. You ought to be proud of them, parents. We're always impressed when the students come and testify. So thank y'all all for coming in that lonely. I don't know what time you left, but I would think it was probably around 4 or 5 o'clock this morning. So thank y'all for staying awake. Thank you.
Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, at the appropriate time, I move Fable as amended.
Members, we have one cord in opposition who does not wish to speak, Eva Kemp with the Democrats for Education Reform. The board is clear. Senator Gatti to close on Senate Bill 512 as amended.
I really do. I get to represent some great people, and it's when these tough things happen back home, and you get to meet the folks that are struggling with it, and it's really neat. Alan Engelhorn was a teacher in 1956, and he had a student named Ellery Shemp, and every Friday he would sit down, his English student, and he would say, I want you to write me a critical essay, critical thinking about something big you want to change in your world. And that student-teacher relationship was so strong that little Ellery, 15 years old, 1956, when it was time to pray in his school and pull out his Bible, he pulled out a different book, the Koran, and was time to say the Lord's Prayer. He sat down in class, and he stood up and he said, I object to this religious activity. It is because of that one child, that one teacher. That's the reason we've had all these U.S. Supreme Court cases on school prayer. So the student-teacher relationship is formative. You see that? That student, that teacher met, wrote papers based on Thoreau's books, and they wrote papers together, and that teacher indoctrinated that child and said, prayer's bad. You need to stand up and take a huge stand against it. Isn't it funny that 60 years later we're trying to do the different, we're trying to do 180, the opposite, and we're encouraging children to stand up and do what they need to do. So I appreciate y'all's time today. I appreciate everyone that traveled from back home. I told them we'd be brief today. I think that's something that we'll have to make up for with some pizza or ice cream. But thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, for your time.
Thank you, Senator Gatti. The board is clear. Senator Walsworth has moved favorable on Senate Bill 512 as amended. Is there any objection? I object. Senator Appel objects. Senator Walsworth has moved favorable on Senate Bill 512 as amended, and Senator Appel objects. Ms. Richard, will you call a roll?
Senator Milkovich?
Yes.
Yes. Senator Appel? No. Senator Boudreaux?
Yes.
Yes. Senator Mizell?
Yes.
Yes. Senator Walsworth?
Yes.
Yes. Senator Wyatt?
Yes.
Yes. 5 yeas, 1 nay.
Thank you. And Senate Bill 512 as amended will be reported favorably. Thank you for your long trip. I apologize for having to made you wait and Senator Bishop's group to have to wait for so long, but Senator Smith had Representative Smith had a long bill. But